If you are witnessing an emergency and a child is in immediate danger, call 911 right away. Then intervene to keep the child from further harm until the authorities arrive. In this video, we're going to go over what to do if you suspect a child in your program is being abused, what to do if you are being falsely accused of hurting a child, and finally, how to help a child who is self-harming. This is a weighty topic, so we'll take it step by step so that you don't feel like you're out of your depth if you ever have to handle a case of child abuse in your children's program. Just a note before we go further. The following guidelines are considered general practices, not legal advice. We can't cover every specific situation, so it would be best to seek legal counsel for your ministry. You can find some recommendations in the description box. Also, a copy of a child protection policy and handling abuse procedures is also available in the description box. With that said, let's start with what should have been in place from day one, a child protection policy. You can refer to our class, Best Practices for Keeping Children Safe. The class covers preventative measures like the 2-person rule and safe touches and more. But what if, despite these safeguards, someone within the ministry is accused of abusing a child? Or what if the abuse is coming from someone outside of the ministry? Either way, here's what you do. If you take only one thing away from this class, it should be this. If you have reasonable suspicion of child abuse, or if you hear an allegation of child abuse in most states in the United States, you have a legal responsibility to report it promptly, usually within 24 hours, but laws vary. Meaning, if you are aware that a child is in danger and you discover that you didn't report it and the child's harmed, you could be held personally liable for that failure. If you would like to know what the law is for your state, you can search online for your state's child abuse reporting policy, or you could consult a legal professional. But let's define the important words first, and then we'll go over the steps you'll need to take to make a report. Who is considered a child? A child is a person who is under the age of 18. What is considered abuse? Abuse is defined by law as harm or threatened harm to a child's health and safety by a person responsible for the child's health and safety. Although the definition can vary state by state. There are different types of abuse, like physical, sexual, emotional, or abuse through neglect. The specific definition for the types of abuse may also vary state to state, but generally child physical abuse can be defined as non-accidental injury resulting from hitting, whipping, beating, biting, kicking, burning, cutting, or any action that harms a child's body. Child sexual abuse is any form of sexual conduct or conduct with or towards a child. This can range from physical acts like sexual touching to non-physical acts like exposing a child to pornography or making lewd remarks towards a child. Child emotional abuse can be defined as causing harm to a child's mental and emotional well-being and development, including but not limited to verbal humiliation, threats, insults, shaming, name-calling, as well as through withholding affection or isolating a child. Finally, abusive child neglect is any recent act or failure to act on the part of a parent or caretaker that prevents an imminent risk of serious harm to the child. This happens when a caregiver fails to provide the child with basic food, water, clothing, shelter, medical attention, and adult supervision appropriate for their age and development. More examples are given in the Handling Abuse Procedure document available in the description below. One thing to note is that abuse is different from discipline. Discipline is in moderation and appropriate to the age of the child. Discipline helps the child learn about what's right and wrong and the consequences. However, corporal punishment is not appropriate in the children's ministry. Our next question is, what is reasonable suspicion and allegation? Is when you have reason to believe that a child has been harmed or will be harmed in the near future. It doesn't mean you witness the abuse or that you're 100% sure abuse is happening. It means that after using common sense to rule out normal age-appropriate childhood injuries and behaviors, you see abnormal injuries or behaviors that raise your suspicions. Or maybe the individual signs do not raise suspicions, but as a whole, they are cause for concern. An allegation is when a child tells you about their abuse, and it is not the case of misunderstanding. My daddy beats me every Saturday at video games, and it's not a child's imagination or an exaggeration. My mom is abusive. How so? She took my iPad away for a week. Apart from that, a child's sincere allegation of abuse should be taken seriously and investigated. So who do I report to and what does it mean? A report means to contact the proper authorities and tell them what led you to have a reasonable suspicion. A report is a request that the authorities open an investigation and check on the welfare of the child you believe is in an abuse situation. Your state's Child Protection Services, CPS, has authority over cases of abuse coming from a child's legal guardian or those who are legally responsible for the child's care. If the accused is not legally responsible for the child's care, then it falls under the jurisdiction of law enforcement. Law enforcement can also respond right away if it's an emergency where CPS cannot. But what if it's really nothing and I just overreacted, you might ask? As long as you have made the report in good faith, meaning you're not knowingly making a false or malicious report, you have good faith immunity that protects you from civil and criminal liability. Additionally, the person receiving the report will talk to you and screen the report. They'll see if what you're describing falls under the law's definition of child abuse, if there's enough information to act on, the urgency of the case, and so on. And then they'll decide what needs to be done. Making a report is a big deal, but child abuse is also a big deal. So, for the sake of the kids who often can't protect themselves, if you suspect abuse, please do your part and report it. In Proverbs, it says, "Open your mouth for the speechless, in the cause of all who are appointed to die." If you made it this far, it probably means you're serious about protecting kids from abuse. If you found this content helpful, maybe someone you know would benefit from it too. So please share and like this video to bring it to more people's attention. Now let's go over the reporting process step by step. First, something catches your attention. Maybe you're working with children and you notice that a child has finger-like bruises up and down his arm. His left cheek and ear are also scratched and bruised but healing. When you ask, "What happened?" the child looks uncomfortable and says he fell off his bike over the weekend, which doesn't seem to match the nature of his injuries. Then later on, he tells someone else a different story. Or maybe a child wants to play a secret game taught to her by someone else she knows. When you ask her to explain the game, it becomes apparent that she is describing inappropriate sexual contact with an adult in the disguise of a game. Or maybe you notice that a child who regularly attends is usually in dirty clothes or missing essentials like socks, shoes, or weather-appropriate clothing. The child is also unwashed and often hungry, tired, or sick. Step 1 is that you have reasonable suspicion of abuse. Maybe you saw some unusual signs or behavior, or maybe a child trusts you enough to just tell you. Be sure to stay calm for the child. If the child is open to talking, ask clarifying questions like, "How did that happen? What happened next?" But try not to pry too deep unless you scare them, re-traumatize them, or make them feel uncomfortable. Some questions you could ask to establish reasonable suspicion are included in the Handling Abuse Procedure document in the description box. And do not promise to keep secrets, because it is not a promise you will be able to keep if you need to make a report. You should also refrain from counseling the child, but leave it to the trained professionals. But whatever happens, in the end, you have reason to suspect that an adult is hurting or endangering a child. Step 2 is to write down what you observed and heard as factually and accurately as possible. Then date and sign it so it can be used and filed later. Do this as soon as possible after observing or speaking to a child. When you write things down, do not overemphasize or underemphasize anything, or insert your own opinions or feelings. These are simply the facts. Step 3 is to immediately talk to only the person in charge of the program, like the program leader or the pastor. If the program leader or the pastor is the one being accused or suspected of abuse, then go to the next person up in the chain of command. Share your observations and be ready to make a report to the authorities within 24 hours. The leadership will then take steps to respond to the suspicion or allegation. If the accused is a part of the children's ministry, they will immediately inform the accused of the allegations, temporarily remove them from working with kids until the confidential investigation is resolved, and update them on findings. The leadership will also immediately contact the program's lawyer, the insurance agency covering the ministry, and also help you make a report to the proper authorities. If the accused is not a part of the children's ministry, then the leadership will go straight to helping you make a report to the authorities. It is recommended that the leadership check state laws for details such as what information needs to be included in the report, how quickly the report needs to be made, which government agency to report to, their number, and so forth. But even if you don't have all of your information, go ahead and make a report anyway, and the ones receiving the report can guide you. Please note that if child abuse is reasonably suspected or alleged, it will be taken seriously and investigated no matter what rank or position the accused holds. Step 4 is making the report, most likely over the phone. You must make the report even though your pastor or program leader is with you. The report receiver will ask you questions to identify the child, such as their full name, age, and where they live. They'll ask questions to determine if the details you give match the state's definition of abuse and to determine which agency and how soon they need to act. Again, just give them your plain observations and then follow their instructions. Step 5 is to leave the investigation to the authorities. Meanwhile, keep the child's information confidential and protect their right to privacy. When you do interact with the child, don't make their whole identity about being a potential victim. Also, it would be best to leave counseling to the professionals, so don't assume the role of a counselor. Don't bring up the topic unless the child initiates, but do continue to respond to the child with God's love and truth. If the accused was a part of the children's ministry, a lot will be going on at the leadership level as they cooperate with authorities to investigate the matter. But as far as for you, know that you have done your best and step back. If you have new reasonable suspicions for more abuse, repeat the reporting process from step 1. And again, if a child is in immediate danger, call 911 to intervene to keep the child safe. For example, if a guardian arrives drunk and insists on driving the child home, it would be appropriate to call law enforcement and encourage the guardian to wait because it might turn into a case of child endangerment. So that was handling and reporting suspected and alleged abuse. But what if it's not as serious as that? What if it's a matter of someone on the team accidentally forgetting and breaking the rules outlined in the child protection policy? First, as much as possible, help each other abide by the child protection policy. For example, if someone forgets to grab a second person while with a kid, jump in and be that second person for them. People forget, so work as a team to remind each other to follow the policies that you all agreed to. Whenever you notice that there is rule breaking going on, for the safety of the children and the workers, talk to the program leader. The leadership can keep track of who is struggling to follow the rules, and they can intervene with an official warning. Then they can offer guidance and review the teammates' performance. It's highly recommended that leadership document any warnings given and any meetings that take place and follow up to make sure the policies are being followed. However, if warnings are ignored and the rule breaking continues, then the ministry workers should be removed from working with the children. This too should be documented and filed on the program's internal records. For those who have pure intentions, having their teammates watch their back is a huge relief. For those with evil intentions, having a team watching and keeping each other accountable is a powerful demotivator. Now, let's flip the conversation. What if you are falsely accused of child abuse while working in the ministry? If you have been abiding by child protection policy, that is your first line of defense. But if you are still accused regardless, then here's what you can do. First, when the leadership comes to you with news of the accusation, remain calm and trust in the Lord who sees all things. The leadership will tell you what steps they'll take to investigate, that they'll report the allegation if needed, and that they'll update you on the results. They'll most likely be receiving legal counsel to navigate the situation. Second, voluntarily remove yourself from working with the kids until the matter is resolved. In the meantime, document your side of the story while your memory is still fresh. Third, as soon as possible and before you talk to anyone about the case, we recommend that you seek experienced legal counsel to help you walk through the situation. They can help you know what to do and say. Again, you can find recommendations in the description box below. Please don't let the what if scare you off. More than ever, children need godly examples and instructions in their lives, so don't let the spirit of fear hinder you from children's ministry. Rather, the fear of the Lord will help you make wise choices and bring life and honor. But lastly, what do you do if it's not an adult harming a child, but the child themselves? First, if the child is in immediate danger, call 911 and stabilize the child until help arrives. Self-harm is defined as the act of purposely hurting oneself, as by cutting or burning the skin, as an emotional coping mechanism. For example, maybe you ask a child if she has any prayer requests. Quietly, she asks you to pray for her because she cuts herself with sharp edges when she's really sad and can't stand it anymore. Or maybe you notice that a younger child has a habit of violently banging his head against a wall with his fist when he's upset. First, let's go over some do's and don'ts. Do not make them feel like they're in trouble. The child is not the enemy. whatever they're struggling with inside of them is. Our aim is to not punish, but to bring healing. Therefore, don't reject or avoid them. They need help. Do not be judgmental, criticize a child, or blame them. Also, don't belittle or dismiss their feelings. Start arguing or jump to conclusions or jump to offering solutions without addressing the root cause. And do not promise a child that you'll keep their self-harm a secret, because it is not in their best interest. Do stay calm for the child's sake and don't freak out. Tell them that it's okay to ask for help when they're hurting. Tell them that you're on their side and that they don't have to go through this alone. Be a listening ear without being pushy. Be patient and caring and seek to understand the underlying cause of the behavior. If they share, acknowledge their emotions even if you don't condone their choices. Ask them who else in their life knows about this. And you can ask them if there's anything you can do to help them. Stay open to talking if they want to talk to you again, but also tactfully let the program leader and the child's guardian know and give the child professional help. Also, see the child as a whole person, not just as a self-harmer. Continue to show them God's love and truth as you have been doing so far. In conclusion, no harm against children will be ignored or covered up. We have a duty as Christians to bring light and love into dark situations. When a child is being harmed, we will not turn a blind eye. Rather, we will see it as an opportunity to reach out to a suffering soul.